the world of the internet.
It can get a bit much sometimes.
I don't know.
Pretty much, yeah.
Welcome to
Move Over Mother Teresa.
What is my purpose? What am I gonna contribute to the world?
Interviews with creators who
Show the world
give
vulnerability and masculinity.
Encourage consciousness.
shit.
Can I swear?
So today we are speaking with Lydia Bolton. So disclaimer, Lydia Bolton is one of my talent at Creative Ally, and she is a slow fashion designer and sustainability creator who uses like surplus fabric, wasted stock, like dead stock in all her creations. And she's become one of the leading voices in like sustainable fashion within the UK. And what she's done is pretty amazing, because she's created this like very innovative business whereby she's not just, doing design, like she does a lot of like design collabs, but she's also like creating content that's like educational. And she's also like developed this community who she is empowering to mend and repair and, like look at their wardrobes and think, how can I reuse this stuff? And I really think she's created this movement more about like kind of care and compassion for like the things that we own. And she's just really brilliant and very like solution oriented. She really understands people and how they dress, and she comes from like a long sort of generation of women that really care about their clothing and what you own. So I think there's lots of topics that we can talk about with her.
Amazing. One thing just immediately I'd love to dig into with her there is this idea of like working from the ground up, right? She's empowering lots of different people with various workshops and solutions. This is very of our time, right? As we no longer live in a monoculture where sort of social change kind of came from top down. So that's be super interested to get into that stuff, how she's empowering people from the ground up.
Yeah, I mean, not to be negative, but I feel like there was a time when this type of creator were really respected and used in a lot of campaigns and used to help guide big brands. And then a lot of greenwashing happened, brands rode that wave of upcycling and trade in your old leggings, get £10 off a new pair of leggings. And actually it was used as a mask to continue doing what they were doing. And so I am very curious about how her work can or is or tries to, if it's not right now, genuinely cause change, even if it's small. Like, how do we disrupt what's happening already?
And she does a lot of work with brands, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting between you two, her and her agent, what she does, what you guys think about as you kind of mitigate against a brand who might just be interested in greenwashing.
Yeah.
How those partnerships can really lead to change.
I think there's also this like kind of wider topic we should touch upon as well around fashion and fashion's, I guess, being the kind of like the target or like the culprit that all environmental issues are pinned on. And actually, if you think about it, right, fashion is a feminist issue.
Yes.
From like the creation of the clothes to those who work in fashion, from the factories to marketing, and yet fashion seems to have taken the blame for all our environmental issues, and like greenwashing in fashion, fast fashion. It's like a buzzword, and it takes the blame for a lot of things.
But it does contribute more carbon to the earth than all cars and all ships combined. So it is a big environmental issue, but you're saying that it's the focus is in the wrong area, right?
Well, I'm saying that there should also be conversations around everything else, right? I think you have to approach everything holistically, but it does seem like fashion does take the flak when, we know that crude oil drilling and extraction are doing incredibly bad things to the planet. And actually there's micro things that everybody can do across their life to make the world a greener and more conscious space.
It's like a magic trick. They want you to look over here when actually what's really happening is over here. And the problem with that is we then never actually we start drinking from metal straws and we make tiny changes, but actually the stuff that would genuinely make a massive difference doesn't happen. And I find it's always, one, yes, pinned on things that are related to women, and two, pinned on the consumer, when actually change needs to be exacted on a much higher level. Otherwise, what are we really doing here? Are a few straws going to save the world? No, it's a good step, but ultimately we need change at like government level. So
but before that we need information.
Yes.
And most information around like how things are made, how things are created, where they go afterwards, the life cycle of any item is hidden.
Yeah.
I mean, for an example, right, I have a Dyson Hoover. Something stopped working and I bought a replacement.
Surprise, surprise, they're the worst. It's such a marketing, like...
Well, you know, it's done me well. It's done 5 years. Use it a lot. Anyway, so it's a, huge, like globally known, electronic company. And when I went to, see where the recycling point was for it, they said they don't recycle, which was like kind of mad, right? And it's like, we as consumers don't know this information. Like it's a battery operated piece of equipment. Why can't it be these things be recycled? Like where is the information there for the consumer to make the right choice?
Inevitably, I think we are going to get into the discussion of the conflict between reuse and business. It just generally does not pay to use things multiple times. So the business that's behind everything is in many ways like the main issue as you look forward to what the solutions might be. However, one thing I'd love to discuss is what's happening in business. So if you look at fast fashion brands of Shein and versus reuse platforms and marketplaces like Vinted, there is something really interesting going on. So I think we have to talk about what are the business models that support reuse, multiple use, versus the incumbent business models that traditionally have been so successful and are a big part of the problem.
The other thing I'm interested in is whenever there's ever a problem, right? I like to think, well, who does this problem serve? Who benefits from us having the system the way it is? And so that's something I'm interested in getting into. Like, why did we end up here? Because we weren't always in this position. So who helped set those dominoes off and led us to this point?
Fee, what's the most uninteresting thing we can talk about and so should avoid? What does Lydia get asked all the time that she's answered before in other podcasts that we should just not bother going there?
I think probably like how she started. Maybe it is an interesting story. She has talked about it a lot, but I think she really lives and breathes sustainability. She was brought up in an eco household. Her mum taught her how to reuse, reduce, everything, and so she's really created a business based out of her own, from her own values, and that's interesting. But I think maybe focusing on, well, her understanding of the fashion world. She worked as a designer within a large fashion brand, and then decided not to. She wanted to live out her values. So I think her understanding of the fashion world, how it operates, maybe like we said before about the missing information, not misinformation, for consumers. I think that's interesting. And also how she sees the fashion industry, and kind of wider culture as well, changing.
And what do you think the biggest challenge for her that she's facing in view of doing more of what she does?
Well, I think the idea of upcycling and repair, and it became like a big trend when actually what she does is not trend based, right? She'll create items that have a sort of slight trend leaning potentially, but upcycling became a big trend wave a year or so ago. And I think what we want to make sure of is that it's not seen as something that's kind of over and done. It is something that is a life skill, actually, and one that we should all know a little bit about. But I'm sure she'll talk about this when she's on.
Cool.
Should we bring her in?
I think we should.
Hi, I'm Lydia, and I run a slow fashion brand called Lydia Bolton.
Be super transparent about the supply chain. Tell us explicitly who made the clothes, how they were made.
She's finished a fresh new puffer made from an old one.
I would like to start this episode by saying you're here to answer for the entire fashion industry and tell us what's wrong and hold them to account. But actually, so the thing I'm most interested in is this thing called metabolic rift. So this gap between us as people and the things that sustain us. The loop is just broken. There's this big gap. We have no idea how our clothes are made. We have no idea where our food comes from. We have no idea someone named something else where our electronics are put together.
Where food comes from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's a massive problem in fashion, and your content kind of speaks to that. So I'm curious about what you think of that issue in general.
Yeah, totally agree. I think like food, clothing, so many things that we consume, we have absolutely no idea about any of the process. I always feel like there needs to be like a little children's book about like where like an orange comes from, and then you see all of these stages, and then you maybe think differently about wasting it or like not eating it. Because I feel like that's just really clear. But then yes, same with our clothing. We don't know kind of like the cotton is like a crop which is grown, it's a very water intensive crop. It's so often picked by hand, and then we just see a t-shirt that's say like £3, buy it and think nothing of it, and it's just like that's just one tiny stage, and then it's like the cotton being spun, the fabric being dyed, again loads of water waste and chemicals in the dyeing process, which then affects obviously so many communities and everyone downstream of the river as well. And then the factories of how the clothing is made, the workers, then the freight of the clothing being transported to all the different countries, then it being packed, processed, shipped out, and then it's £3 and we don't care, we don't have a connection with it. Maybe wear it, maybe don't, and then chuck it away, and then it goes shipped out to another country, sits in someone else's land and pollutes their world.
It's interesting. I used to work on a farm, and I remember I'd have to do these tours, a city farm in London, it's not, and I'd have to bring these kids in and give them a tour of the farm and just say to them, these chickens are where you get your chicken nuggets from. And the kids would be like, what do you mean? Like,
Imagine how the chicken felt hearing that news.
It's very rude. So, it's interesting because we consume, but we don't really see the consequences of our actions. And I think I like to think of it as the cost of convenience. Like everything is so easy. Our rubbish is picked up for us on a Thursday. Our, even as a country, we ship our waste out to another country and it sits on their beaches and pollutes their waters and, kills their people. And I think if we had more inconvenience in our life, if we had to dispose of our own rubbish, if we had to repair our own clothes every time.
Pick our own fruit.
Kill our own animals if you want to eat them. We would think more carefully about the production process. We would find a way to reduce waste. We would we would have the skills that we need to survive. But ultimately, I just think it's the cost of convenience that we have made this bed that we now have to lie on.
Yeah.
But don't you think that is the only thing that can be sold now in capitalism is convenience? Because we have everything, almost everything we could probably ever need. And actually the updated everything is just becoming more convenient. Now you can get items delivered to your door in 15 minutes. You could buy a bottle of wine. Now you can book your trains on Uber. That's the way that capitalism is like pushing the world. It's just like, ultimate convenience. I don't know where we will go next. Will we be carried to the office,
It's like
via
WALL-E.
a machine?
Have you guys seen that film?
Yeah.
Where everybody's
so scary.
Everybody's in those floating chairs and they drink their meals and they stare at the TV all the time, and it's so convenient because they go from you just press a button and it takes you where you want to go.
Yeah.
That's where we're heading.
When that came out like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe more.
And it
Probably
talks
15.
about the trash on our planet. Wow, that was actually a good reference. I forgot that. It talks about how much trash is on our planet and how it makes it unlivable for human beings.
So let's assume that the solution is not going to be to introduce more inconvenience into the world. What, Lydia, is your main focus area, right? As you try and raise awareness for exactly this issue?
Yeah, my main focus is all just showing value to what we've already got. There's so much that already exists. We've got enough clothing for the next 6 or 7 generations. And even just in our own wardrobes, we've got so much clothing.
Is that true? We've got enough clothing for 6 or 7 generations?
Yeah, which is insane when you think about it.
What does that actually look like? It's very hard for me to imagine. You say it and I can understand it's a big deal.
I guess it's like 8 billion people times 6 or 7, isn't it?
Yeah.
That amount of outfits.
Yeah.
Is that it? Is that the maths? Plus a bit of growth.
More than that, because you've got to think about it's not just outfits, it's whole wardrobes, it's the boxes under your bed, and
I think it's 92 million tonnes of clothing goes to landfill each year. So that's just
from the UK.
Yeah, from the UK. I think maybe that's global.
Fact check.
Yeah, fact check. I think that might be global.
Either way, it's a massive
Either way, a lot. Basically, a lot is wasted.
Yeah.
And a huge amount of the waste and the carbon comes from the production stage. So actually, it's something like 70%, 69% of the carbon comes from when we produce the clothing. So actually, reusing and giving things a new life cuts out well, obviously a lot of the textile waste, but also a lot of like the waste and the carbon produced in the manufacturing. So yeah, my mission is just to show how we can value all the things already in existence, give them a new life. Of course, we all kind of have creativity and like individual expression. So it's about how can you kind of pair that reuse with fashion and making things that you want to wear and that you feel good in, and kind of not necessarily fully I do think we need to compromise it on part, the like consumerism side, but not totally compromising on like everyone's like individual need to express themselves. And fashion is really fun and people enjoy outfits, so it's not like, you know, completely getting rid of that, but like how can you pair that with more conscious consumption, being more sustainable, and create a world which is just less wasteful, and I think also a bit more creative. When you've got parameters, you have to be creative. When you're kind of just see something that's cute, buy it, actually there's no creativity, or to be honest, not that much individual thought process in that either.
Hi, it's Mira. Just a quick one. Can you send me a voice note letting me know who you want to donate your ad slot to for your episode?
Hey Mira, I want to give my ad spot to the All Foundation. They are a charity based in Accra in Ghana and are a catalyst for a justice-led circular economy in solidarity with Cantamanto. Cantamanto is one of the largest second-hand clothing markets in the world, and the people there are the most affected by the vast overproduction and overconsumption within fashion. Their work is about educating and facilitating regenerative alternatives with these really creative and amazing people in Ghana.
I want to go back to what you said about the production of fashion, because I think there's something very interesting about the materials that you work with, and giving new life to particular materials that most consumers would not know anything about. So can you talk a little bit about some of the fabrics that you use?
So I use a range of fabrics. One of the things that I've used quite a lot is swatches, and these are small example pieces of fabrics that textile manufacturers make them, and then they go out to brands, and it's so brands can see all these different samples and choose them to build their collection.
And they're shipped out, right? Often from like
Italy, China, all over, all over.
Actually, I think I would get these when I was buying a sofa. They sent me like 5. Okay.
Yes, So also not even just fashion, but in all upholstery, everything textile based, like hundreds of these about A4 size pieces of fabric. And it's a huge waste stream. And kind of each season, when I worked at a fashion brand, each season we would get more swatches to choose for like the next collection. And then they're obviously quite small, so there's just like nothing really that can be done with them. And they come on like a cardboard header with a plastic hanger. So then there's just always like lots of components that need to be deconstructed. So I started using these knit swatches and making patchwork cardigans, because there's just like literally nothing else that can be done with them. So that's kind of one of the waste streams, which I think most people just don't really know about, and that is very vast. And then a lot of the other textiles I use, I kind of will go to a charity shop and buy something which I kind of think other people might not want to buy. Like I'll buy stuff that might be from like Boohoo, Shein, and kind of use that and remake it. And there's part of me, there's like just that kind of two-part conversation of some people think they wouldn't buy that secondhand and wear it. For me, when I'm remaking it, I think it's actually a really good thing to reuse, because then it's given a new life, and I kind of can see how could you turn something which has got so low value in my mind, it doesn't have a low value because it's still being made by a human, made from a resource from the planet, which inherently for me, that is why it is valuable. But kind of we don't see it as any value because, they're like cheap brands. So we have like disconnected from it, don't care about it. Whereas actually there's so much value in it from how it's been produced and who it's been produced by. Yeah. Not the brand, but as in the human involvement of it, not that those brands have value.
It's interesting how we assign value to clothes. I think we think of it as, if it's more expensive, then perhaps it has more value. But actually, what about the history of it? What about the more you wear it and then it wears in a slight place and you repair it slightly, all of that does bring value. And I think some of my clothes are clothes that were from my aunts and my mum, and my grandma just gave me a bag that she used to carry around when she was younger. And I really treasure those few pieces of items. But I also know that they were made a lot better than the clothes I have now. Like even what I'm wearing right now, I do like this top and I've had it for a few years, but it feels cheap. You know what I mean? Like it feels poor quality. And I think, do you do you factor that change of quality into how you perceive the value of items?
Yeah, definitely think there's been a huge change in the quality. Well, it's because of the scale. Now we produce at such scale and things need to be made at such speed, and it's all about like that really as low as possible margin, and that's why. So then you will reduce kind of the steps into make an item to make it as quick as possible, as opposed to make it for quality and longevity. So yeah, that's definitely hugely changed. Personally, I think if I'm buying for myself, maybe I think about that. If I'm buying to remake in the work, I don't necessarily bother factoring that in. And actually, I was upcycling a high street blazer the other day, and when I have to unpick it, and then obviously I'm seeing how this item is made, and often they aren't made that badly. There's loads to unpick. There's a lot of stitching in there. Sometimes I'm like, why have you made this quite so well?
It's also the tail that wags the dog, right? If as a manufacturer you know the consumer expectation is to wear this just a handful of times, you're not going to build something that's suitable for more than that.
Yeah, totally.
I was reading this thing that said being able to wear something once or use something once and then throw it away
it's a crime.
It's
a total crime.
It's a crime.
Yeah.
But also it's kind of this sign of status, because if you can afford to wear something once and chuck it away, or you see these celebrity, I remember MTV Cribs, and a few times people would say, you know, I only wear my sneakers once, and I'd be like, oh my God, that's insane, you only wear your sneakers once. And it has become the status symbol of I can afford to throw it away, I can afford to not care, I can afford to not value. And until those chickens come home to roost and we're like, oh no, there's plastic in my nutsack, like this is a byproduct of all the waste that I have been chucking away, people don't really seem to care.
Yeah, I think there is a shift going on, but I completely agree. And I feel like it's kind of like the opposite of luxury. I feel like luxury is actually having something for a really long time, really loving it.
That has history.
Yeah, totally. And like the richness, like the clothing you said from like your mum and your aunt, like that's invaluable. That like doesn't have a monetary value because of personally how much it means to you. And I think it's that like kind of, even if we build our own connection back with our wardrobe, from passing things on, from mending, repairing, that is how you can build that connection and then have a less disposable mindset towards it.
So do you think we have, as a sort of society, our generation, do you think we've lost this idea of like preservation? And if so, can we get it back?
Definitely we can get it back. Defo. Always trying to be a positive gal. But yeah, totally we've lost it. It was so, I mean, it was like back to where the conversation started, was so, because we're so disconnected of where it came from, that's very hard for us then, I think, to build a connection with something off the bat. Whereas I think if you start building the connection earlier on of this being like a valuable resource, then it's easier to then build it when you have it. And I think also it does come down to being really conscious with what you consume, buying pieces that you really love, and then you have more of a connection with them, rather than like, oh, I'm just going to a party, I kind of need it, but then you actually don't love it or care about it that much. But I think spending that a bit more time to buy pieces that you really, really love and really fit in your wardrobe. And in a way, not as in, I don't do this personally, but in a way it's slightly regardless of where it comes from, because I don't think that connection, I think you can have that connection if you just really, really choose things you love. I would say probably if you choose a higher quality piece, you'll have more of a connection with it. But I think you still can really care about things that you get from high street brands.
And what would you say to somebody who, because, that presumes that that person is kind of fine with keeping their clothes or their items, but we do know that there is this, there's a pressure for people to, want to feel kind of current, to feel like they're part of society by adopting, a particular style, or, feeling like they want to be part of, the kind of like the conversation, the world.
And the mini cause.
Yeah.
Even things like costume parties, I actually find really uncomfortable, because at Halloween, I don't actually have anything to wear. Like my stomach drops a little bit, 'cause I'm like, I know I don't have anything to wear. And I have to go find friends who can lend it to me. And I had a hen do recently, and I was like, I had to ask one of the girls, like, can you bring some clothes to me? Because I genuinely don't have anything to wear.
But that's how it should be. I really do think that, you should be able to pass clothes around, share things.
But it makes me feel embarrassed. And I think that's like a weird psychological effect of the fact that I haven't got this stuff in my wardrobe already. But you are completely right. It's just funny that the way I've interpreted it.
I mean, that's probably capitalism.
Can't escape it.
The feeling that you need to own something and have it yourself.
I was kind of interested going into this as to try and understand like what's the business of this topic saying at the moment, right? Because you've got a company like Shein, which is 50%, I think, of the fast fashion market, at least in the US.
Yeah.
And then you've got platforms like Vinted, which are really interesting, right? A marketplace for secondhand selling and buying. And I was looking, and I think this is interesting, but I'm using the word interesting quite tentatively. Time will tell. But if you look at the most recent accounts for both of these companies, right, Shein makes 30 billion a year in revenue. So clearly, like, that as a market shows that it is large. Fast fashion is
Feels
probably...
like I'm in the wrong industry.
No, I'm definitely in the right industry.
Vinted makes 700 million. Okay, so again, that probably indicates there's two different market sizes here. But in 2023 to 24... Vinted made a increased profit by 300%, whereas Shein's profits decreased by 50%, which led their profit margin. Vinted's was about 10% and Shein's was about 3%. So Vinted has a profit margin of 3 or 4 times that of Shein at the moment. And of course, they don't have to manufacture the clothes because people are just buying and selling them there. So I think you've got two different types of businesses doing two very different things at the moment, which is really interesting. And even if you were to compare, because that's only two businesses, Depop versus ASOS or Boohoo, the same trend is happening. So I think there's something really promising going on with the business of this, right? It's people really looking to at where they're buying their clothes from, and what's the what's the business that's being supported by that behaviour.
Yeah, totally. And I think it was in France. Vinted, was it the second biggest retailer?
Yeah.
Second,
I think it's the first.
Or was it first or second biggest retailer? So that's like amazing. And I'd say in the last few years,
they've also banned Shein, haven't they, from operating
in France?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
wow.
I think the
it's not gone through.
It's not 100% gone through, but there's been whatever the first step is with the government that has been They've proposed a rule to ban it, but I don't know if it has gone through. But yeah, that was at the start of the summer. But even just from observing my friends in the last couple of years, they buy now so much from Vinted, whereas kind of like a few years ago they didn't. So I think there is a really big shift in the general consumer from like actually buying secondhand and being a bit more kind of aware with where something comes from and actually thinking, oh, maybe I can find the secondhand. Whereas I guess that's because it's become so much more easily accessible to kind of buy secondhand things.
They actually produce an impact report, which is really interesting because Vinted has 105 million users and they survey over 100,000 of them every year to ask them why they're using the platform. So I was curious, right, if Vinted as a business is doing so well, to your point around convenience mirror, is that actually just the market forces, right? Are people just realizing there's great value on Vinted, and are they being driven by that, or are they being driven by something else? And in this survey, it shows that 50% of Vinted users do use Vinted primarily because of the affordability and price point, which is great, right? That's a market doing its job. But 20%, their primary purpose of using Vinted is because of sustainability reasons.
That's really
so
good.
over 20 million people on Vinted are primarily using Vinted because they care about the planet first and foremost.
So good. Yeah. Well, obviously, like business-wise, hugely growing thing, but I think just in consumers, I think it's so hard. On the whole, I feel like people are caring more, but I don't know. It does sometimes. Maybe it's slowed down a bit recently because there's obviously so much going on in the world.
You've been doing this for quite a long time now. So I met you in 2020, and you already had your business for a year.
Yeah.
So how do you think the sort of consumer mindset has changed in that time? Because there has been quite a few sort of sustainable trends and shifts.
Definitely, people are so much more understanding of why buying something sustainable is important and why. So I say upcycling just so it's really clear what area of sustainability I'm in, because I think as a term, sustainability is so broad. So many brands will say, oh, it's sustainable. And then you're like, but how is it sustainable? So I specifically say upcycling. So it's really clear what area of... I think I don't love the word upcycling.
I was going to say, I've heard you say you don't love the word upcycling before. Why is that? And you've been saying remaking a couple of times here.
I think upcycling, I just think kind of has maybe less chic connotations.
Okay.
But we can change it. We're going to change it. I think it has changed recently. People's mindset towards the word upcycling. I just don't think it sounds maybe that premium or like that cool. I don't know. But I think it really does what it says on the tin. People know what it is, whereas just the word sustainability is so vague and too broad. So I do now, when I started, I didn't think I used the term upcycling, but now I'm like, I have to make it the most obvious. So yeah, massively people have gone from, I think, not really understanding why there's a need for that to now really understanding it. And I also think there's been a real, from COVID, like that shift to shop independent brands, small brands, kind of actually support an individual or a small organisation as to just like giving huge companies more and more money. I think like where you spend is like the most important thing. Like that really is kind of what moves things. If you spend money with independent brands, that's how we actually kind of, they can have way more impact, way more change. So yeah, I think over the last 5 years there's been such a big movement towards it, and I think people understanding the importance of where the materials come from, what materials are better for you, what materials are better for the planet, what materials kind of less harmful, and how they're produced and how we can choose more.
So it's like a big education piece that's gone on, right?
Yeah, so that was kind of when I started. I always did quite a lot of educational stuff alongside, because I was like, I don't know if that many people get it, why it's important to do. So I definitely think the education has improved, but still you'll still meet people that have like no idea. It's kind of like that most returns are thrown away, which is why it's not good to order like two
Is that
sizes.
true? Most returns are actually just thrown away.
Yeah, it's too expensive to process. It's cheaper to check out.
I always order 2 sizes if I order something online.
Yeah.
It's so hard to find trousers that fit.
Hard, yeah.
But that's,
So we need to return to brick and mortar.
Yeah.
Keep the the retail shops, or the high streets alive.
But these websites, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently actually, these websites, and it kind of ties into the convenience thing and having so much choice that you can return multiple sizes. Everything kind of becomes a little bit transactional, you know what I mean? And I've noticed it bleed out into loads of other areas of life, like not just fashion, but I have a few friends who use dating apps, and there's so much choice. It's like sausages at a meat market. Like but you're picking on really, you don't meet these people in person. You're not choosing for a particular reason, and I just find that everything has become very transactional, and I find that part of all of this quite depressing, because I don't see this as just like a fashion problem where we have so much choice and there's like 100, 300 new styles that come out every year from a particular brand, instead of having, what they called seasonal collections and moving slower. I just see it bleed out into every part of life, and I just find it really sad, because how do we go from we then have to move to inconvenience, because you have to meet people in person, or you have to pick from a seasonal collection. You might not have something you want in there, or whatever else it may be. So it really is, to me, just inconvenience is the other choice. And do you see there being another solution?
I feel like you'll know about this. Isn't there like studying like data on like how actually more choice doesn't make you happier?
Yeah, the paradox of choices.
Yeah. And actually how you think more choice, you've got more options, but actually less choice is better.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? I sit in front of the sandwich aisle at Sainsbury's and just have a panic attack. Yeah. There's too much choice.
Always go for
Netflix.
Netflix.
Yeah. How often do you sit there?
And it's been 30 minutes.
I reckon if you could look at my Netflix usage, you would see I spend more time searching than I do watching something.
Yeah, and when we only had 5 channels, I, always could find Home and Away to watch. Yeah. It's much easier.
Twice a day.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're right there, Mira. This does speak to a psyche, like a group think that has evolved as to like our need for lots and more of lots. And so this is why it's such a fascinating little area amazing big area you work in, Lydia, because the mindset you're trying to shift actually speaks to the very nature of who we've become, rather than appreciating things over time and respecting and understanding what is enough rather than what is this thing called more.
Yeah.
You're really challenging again, like I think who we have become over the last couple of decades, right?
Yeah, I think also that I've thought about that, like when you look at fashion brands, the way they've grown is just based off an unsustainable model. So actually, how can you grow but not in that always needing more? And like, is there a way to grow a business that isn't just about like increasing volume, but like, can you grow differently? But it is hard. And there's lots of things like maybe if growth, how is growth measured? Kind of like donut growth and degrowth and all of that, I think is really interesting. Like maybe if growth wasn't measured by increase, but maybe by value or by how little impact you make, that would be interesting. I don't know if we're quite there, but I think it's about individuals taking that on, and then that obviously like spills out.
I'm curious what you think. Have we gone past the kind of sustainability trend, or like where do you see the future of sustainability in fashion?
It's lots of different components. I don't think it's like one thing, and I think it's everyone in their different pockets caring more. So obviously, like top level, it's like governance and legal changes. That's like will make huge amounts of impact. But often when I go to talks, that's what people say is the solution. I'm just like, oh, so boring. Like that doesn't make, of course, we know that that's like the solution with most things. Like if we had different rules and legislation, that would obviously help everything. It just puts the problem still far away, and it's still something else that, I mean, huge amount of change would come from that, but it still moves it away from it being something that we can like actively change and feel that we've got agency over to make like have a positive impact towards. So I think, yes, it's that legislation that will make a big impact. Also just a bit like that more communal approach to our wardrobes. I think that actually would make a really big change, thinking it's not just mine and but actually everyone can wear each other's clothes, sharing that renting side. I also think it's independent creatives are so much more creative than big brands and so agile and adaptable. And I think it's that collaboration between the big brand that's got like the funds and the supply chains kind of out to the customers. It's like those big brands working with the independent creatives and the smaller businesses that can like produce locally, can do things that really resonate with like local communities that actually larger businesses typically don't have those relationships, and they're able to then produce the small independent creatives kind of like cross collaborate, and like they bring this like true sustainable focus or whatever that focus might be with a brand which is less able to access it because they're so big. And then obviously like future materials, all of that. There's so much interesting work going on in that, like biosequins and all of that kind of stuff. So loads of different stuff.
Little pockets of like progression in different areas of fashion.
I think so. And that all coming together, and then as consumers just being really conscious. I think it is just having like adding that thought into kind of everything you do, and like similar like with how you buy your food. Do you need strawberries in December? No, not really. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if you kept all your packaging, would you buy food in packaging? No, you wouldn't. You'd buy it loose because there's that photography project where they ask people to keep all of their rubbish, so waste, for one week, and then they photograph the subjects within all the trash that they have, and it's just absolutely insane how much like excess material there is in everything. From like, I don't know, your tins, right, through to the packaging that's on every single piece of, fruit and vegetables in the UK. It's like, unless obviously you consciously make an effort to shop elsewhere. But it's like, it's a lot. It's so disturbing. You see the amounts that, say, one person or one family collects in 1 week. It is
really powerful.
Lydia, when you talk about sort of where all the various pockets of the solution to this might come from, there's this story called The 5 Monks, and it was actually written by a philanthropy consultant who was trying to establish where, as a philanthropist, you should sort of focus your efforts on. And it's this mythical tale of 5 monks sat on a riverbank, and they see this baby float past in a basket. So the first monk gets out and ships out this baby to stop it floating on by, but more babies start coming, and he just starts shipping out these babies, and immediately, eventually they stop, but he just keeps doing it. And the second monk decides to go further upstream to try and work out where these babies are coming from, and he realizes they're being put there by by parents that can't look after them, and so he works with them on some education solutions to establish family planning and this kind of stuff, and the babies stop, but then they start coming again, so the third monk goes further upstream, works on like a governance level to try and, incentivize better family planning or whatever it might be. So anyway, all these monks go further and further upstream as they try and solve this issue. And then the fifth monk gets to this sort of point, basically, of consensus, of cohesion, where all the monks' work has done the job it needs to do equally to sort of reach a sort of ultimate solution to stop these babies floating down the stream. And it really makes me think about all of these sort of big systemic issues, such as sustainability. And I love how, you've recognized that whether a consumer who's deciding how to spend their money or how to treat the stuff they own, through to brands and the innovation that they can do around new materials, up to governance, actually, like, it is all required. Yeah. It is all required equally.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that it is everyone in the chain. And I think as consumers, sometimes I do think it is kind of put on the consumers to sort it out, which I don't think is right or fair. But I do think we do need to have shifts in how our attitudes and how we act, even though it shouldn't just be like all on us. I do think I think it is still really good to have that kind of, personal, and I think also that motivates you. It ripples out. If you feel like you can make a change from your action, that is actually quite a positive feeling, as opposed to like, I can't do anything about this.
I also think it validates where in that stream you are focusing your efforts, right? So for someone like you who's workshopping and and educating, maybe it's the sort of second monk territory, right? And that's what you love doing. Yeah. That's what you're really good at. It's what energizes you. But for a lot of people who might care just as much as this issue, actually, like, the governance thing might be what makes them tick, or at least where their capabilities lie. So they might be further upstream, but it's no more or less important. It's just a part of the solution that is required as a whole.
Yeah, totally. And I was talking to this the other day to someone, like, you need everyone on that sphere. Like, you need the people that are kind of like really strongly petitioning and really angry, and then you also need my approach, which is probably a bit more soft and positive, and you need all of those different people on for the same cause, but kind of everyone has their different way of tackling it. Yeah, so great.
Lydia, thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you for coming on the show. You're amazing. I do say that to every guest, but that's because I mean it.
And then I cut it out of the edit.
We would love to give you a Drop Dead Generous grant. Aww. So this is $500 US dollars or £380 for you to spend on an act of kindness, to pay it forward in some way. That tells the world about who you are and what you care about. We've got 1,000 of these grants going out to people all over the world. And the project really is just about trying to show the breadth and depth of how we can treat each other, in positive ways. But it's an honour to call you a grantee.
Thank you.
But thank you for your time.
That's so kind of you.
And if you want to make me a little sweater so I don't have to wear this shirt anymore, also okay. I almost forgot, if you have listened or watched this song, first of all, thank you. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Second of all, I would love if you would share this episode with your community. We put a lot of hard work into making it, and I, for one, would love to keep my job, but also continue to make the show. So the more people who listen and watch, the more likely it is that we get to keep making it, the more people we reach and hopefully help, and the more creators we get to platform. So thank you so much. Please do share it, and I'll see you next week.